Hey guys, Brendo Productions here, and welcome to my first video in an entire year. Now before I get started with this video, I just wanted to take a moment to apologize to all of my viewers for taking so long to actually produce another video. I've gotten a lot of messages making sure I'm okay, and then I've gotten a lot of messages asking if I'm actually going to still make videos. And the answer to both of those is yes, I am okay, and I'm definitely going to keep making videos. I've definitely been a little too busy with school. However, I have some free time right now, so I just wanted to start a new tutorial series that I've been meaning to get around to for a long time. And this tutorial series concerns a little program called Git. And this video in particular is just going to be a basic introduction, so here we go. Now, what is Git? Well, Git, first of all, is spelled G-I-T. And it's basically a version control software. Now, to be more specific, it's a distributed version control software. So version control software is, as you may have guessed, is meant to manage the control or manage the versions of software. So if you have multiple versions of software and you want to easily switch between these various versions, you can go ahead and do so. Now, the most important use case of this is actually when writing code. So when you have code and then you have different versions of this code and you easily want to switch between versions, version control will help you do that. If you're adding a new feature and you're afraid that the new feature will break something and then you find out that it does and then you want to switch back to a previous version, version control will easily handle that situation. However, it's not only limited to designing software. Say you're working on, an essay, and you spend all night working on it, but the last hour or so, you added a bunch of stuff that was very iffy. But you don't remember what you added the next morning. So your version control software will allow you to actually revert the last changes that you made, in order to get back to where you want to be, get back to a stable version of your essay, if you will. So Git is not the only piece of version control software. There's actually several popular ones. In industry, a lot of people use a version control software called Perforce, which is a centralized version control software. We'll get to the differences in a bit. And a lot of people also use one called SVN, which is also centralized. However, Git is a distributed version control software. And the main difference, without you knowing the details of how a version control software works, is that in a centralized version control software, there is only one place where all of the different versions are stored. And then you basically ask this place for a copy of one of the versions, and then you can make changes, and then you can push your changes to that particular place. Now, that would be a centralized version control system. In a distributed version control system, instead of just asking for a version and then pushing a new version, you would instead ask for all the versions. And then locally, you're able to touch all of the other versions. You're able to make your own version. You're able to play around with it, right? So you're able to locally create a new version and then never give it to the location where all of the versions are stored. So a distributed version control software basically allows a place to exist where all of the versions exist, and this is usually somewhere like a server. And then it also allows each person's individual computer to have a copy of all the versions plus their own versions. So it's a great model for people working in teams or open source software where there is a centralized store of versions. However, each person may want to create their own versions and their own history and record of changes they've made. So without further ado, let's go ahead and start getting into the nitty-gritty details of how to use Git. Now, I'm actually running Linux here. I'm running Arch Linux, and by default, Git is installed on, I think, all Linux distributions. If you are running Windows, you're going to need to install a tool called Git Bash, and as soon as you install that, you should be able to follow along pretty close with this tutorial. There's a link to get Git Bash in the description. If you're running a Mac operating system, I'm not sure if Git is installed by default. I think that it is. However, if it's not, there will be a link to get it in the description. So without further ado, here we go. So I'm currently in a directory called Git 0. And if I ls this directory, we can see that there's actually no files in this directory. That's no big deal. However, let's say that I have a file, and let's just call it important note. And we're going to call it important note.txt. And in this important note, I'm going to say this is something very important. Right. So now we have this file important note.txt, and it has something very important in it. So now if we ls, we can see the file again. Now let's just say that we want to keep track of all changes made to this file, and we want to allow ourselves to go back to certain changes. So we're going to use Git to do this. Now, Git by default is initiated with the Git command, and the subcommand that is going to be used most often for pretty much your whole life of using Git is called Git Status. And this will actually get the status of the current directory that you're in. So Git works on a directory level, so you can tell Git to watch any files in a certain directory. So right now we're asking it, what's the status of this current directory? And then it's telling us that it's not actually initialized here. There's no Git repository. Now, a repository is basically a set of files and changes. So what we basically want to do is we want to create a repository right here and tell Git to watch our important note file. So we're going to do just that. In order to actually initialize the repository, we need to use the Git Init command, which is short for initialize. And then once we've done that, you can see that we've initialized the empty Git repository. It tells us everything's good. And then actually, if you ls-a to show all of the hidden files, you can see that there's now a .git directory. This directory is where Git will actually keep track of everything that's important to you. So the various changes made to files, the various commits that have been made, etc. So continuing with that, we can now type git status and see what's going on. And you can see that we actually have now output here. So it tells us that we're on a branch called master. We're currently in the initial commit, and there's some untracked files. So let's go through this one by one to just explain what this means. So the fact that we're on the branch master is fairly obvious. So the way Git works is the primary branch that everybody will be using is called master. And this just means that there's a master copy of working versions of anything in this branch. So the primary branch is master, and then all branches will come from master, and then they should go back into master at some point. The fact that we're on the initial commit, it says, is basically saying that we're here, it's just been initialized, no changes have been made yet. And then it gives us a list of untracked files. So the next thing we may want to do is we may actually want to configure Git to recognize us, right? So right now, Git is basically allowing us to change files and keep track of them. However, there is no way for Git to know who we are. And this is important because we need to know who made these changes, right? Now, I'm already set up to do this. However, I will do it again just so you guys know. So if we actually type git config -- global user.name, and then we actually type in a name, we'll be able to tell Git what our name is and how we're going to be able to keep track of who we are. So I'm just going to provide my actual name. And then one other important thing is we need to provide an email so that any users who see our changes know how to contact us about our changes. So if we type git config -- global user.email, we can then provide an email address for Git to use. And as you can see, when you type these commands, there's no output because Git follows the Unix philosophy wherein if something works, the user doesn't have to know anything. So everything is good. So the next thing we want to do is we actually want to tell Git to watch our important note file. And the reason we need to explicitly tell it to watch it is because there could be files in this directory where we don't want it to watch. So say for instance there's a let's say there's a temporary file. Let's say that you're editing this important note.txt with Microsoft Word. Microsoft Word by default creates temporary files so that if your computer crashes you can resume from that temporary file. Now, you would not want your version control to watch that temporary file because the changes aren't important to you. So we need to explicitly tell Git to watch certain files, and we can do that with the git add command. So I'm just going to type git add important note.txt. And then once we've done that, we can type in Git Status. And you can see that it is now green, and it recognizes it as a change to be committed. So we made a change to this file that is creating the file and writing the initial text into it. And now we can actually tell Git, I made this change, right? So we've told it to watch the file, and now it's always going to be watching the file. And then every time we make a change to it, we can use the Git Commit command to actually commit a change. And we're actually just going to use it with the -m flag, which allows us to provide a message. So I'm just going to provide the message of, we created the important note and added important text. Now, this commit message is actually going to be shown to any teammates you're working with or to your future self. So you need to make sure that you actually provide a detailed message. And then once we hit enter, you can see that there was one insertion made, one file changed. And now if we type git status, you can see that there's nothing to see. So now everything looks the same in our directory. We still have only one file called important note, right? However, now if we actually, now we can actually see the changes that were made to this file, right? So I'm just going to go ahead and clear my terminal so we get back up to a nice clean station. And now if I type git log, which is the log of all of the commits made, we can see that I made one commit, right? It's commit hash EB8B4BDB36038 blah blah. We can see the author and the date it was made, and we can see our message. We created the important note and added important text. Now let's say we wanted to actually see what changes that I made. So if we type in git log here, and we see that the commit hash we want to see the changes for is EB8, right? It's EB8 and then something else. We can actually type git show EB8. Oh, well that's unfortunate. EB8B4. There we go. So you have to provide a decent length for the commit hash in order for Git to actually resolve which commit hash you're referring to. So EB8 was not long enough. However, EB8B4 is indeed long enough. And you can see the actual details of the commit we made. So you can see our message, we created the important note, and then you can also see that we added a line. That's why there's that little plus sign there. We added the line, this is something very important. Now to finish up this tutorial, I'm just going to show you changing the file really quick. So we're going to follow the same workflow. So we can then go ahead and edit the important note.txt file. And we're just going to go ahead and add a new line. This is something else very important. And then we're going to go ahead and quit and save. And then if we actually type in git status, you can see that we're still on the branch master. However, the file important note, which we are now watching, has been modified. And this is important because we have made changes to this file and Git does not know about these changes. So we can actually see exactly how our current file differs from the last file that was in our change list by typing in Git Diff. And once we do that, we can actually see that we've added a empty line and then we've added the line, this is something else very important. So now that we know exactly what changes we have made, we can actually go ahead and commit these changes in the same way. So basically, now we get to select the subset of files in this directory that Git is watching that we would like to commit. So I only want to commit one file, so I'm going to type git add important note.txt. And then if we type git status, we can see that this file is now in what's called the staging area, which means it's ready to commit. So since it's ready to commit, we can go ahead and add the commit message, and we're going to say added another single important line. And once we do that, Git does confirm that we've made this commit. And now if we type git log, you can see that there are now two commits. that are about 3 minutes apart. So thanks for watching this basic introduction on how to use Git. Again, the link to get Git Bash for Windows will be in the description. Hopefully you found this useful. In the next tutorial, we're going to be going over a little more advanced topics, and so keep an eye out for that. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and I hope that you all have a wonderful day. Peace out.